What is up, YouTube? I am in Paris and wanted to do keep up with this YouTube live stuff. And I've already got the first question because someone asked it because they didn't get a chance on the last one. So I was trying to do this one a bit later, just so you guys could yeah, get different people kind of tuning in and hopefully get some yeah, help some more people. So the first one was because I'm working on a documentary this time, and they also know that I work on a lot of narrative stuff as well in terms of just fictional features, shorts, that kind of thing. They wondered if I recorded any differently in terms of my level. So on narrative, a kind of feature film level, I'm aiming for like -20, and then peaking at kind of -12. That's a rough safe bet for just normal conversation, and that way you get really good kind of signal to noise ratios just because of how all the voltages work. Bonjour, Greg. And so the short answer is no, and the other answer is that if it's sometimes online content, or that I know that I'm just feeding a camera and they're not going to do any sort of editing on it. If it's for directly online, I usually actually mix a bit hotter, especially for interviews, because just getting the limiter in at kind of a little bit kind of helps almost compress it, but keeps it kind of a bit louder. Again, it's a delicate balance between obviously just going too hard into the limiter and then taking kind of a lot out. So yeah, generally I would just always say that the kind of -20 rule is safe. I think then a lot of people get confused about when like dynamics in scenes in terms of if you have something really low that then goes really high and then goes really low again, how you go about that, and that's basically just gain control. And then in post-production they're going to have to fill in that kind of background change by obviously filling in all the atmos. And I've already done videos kind of covering how to kind of make that dynamic kind of shorter, because that's going to be better overall for the consistency of the sound, but not necessarily always better for the performance. So it's kind of, yeah, an arts meets craft kind of question. So yeah, there's that as well. So yeah, the short answer I guess is no, and -20 on analog scale or DBFS scale. So it ends up being -20 on a DBFS. So that's full scale, and full scale is where 0 is like the absolute limit, and then obviously going further down. Now I have a sound devices, and they kind of use a mixture on being able to see VU and peak, but they also have a different metering system that I can't remember the name of. But basically they have 0 as -20, and then they have +20, so it's kind of like a, yeah, it's combining like VU with peak metering, but essentially that +20 is 0 dBFS. So I don't want to confuse too many people, so basically every time I talk, if I mention 0 in terms of, yeah, I always basically try to talk in full scale where 0 is the absolute maximum, and because I don't do anything in music where sometimes that can go above, yeah, I'm always going to be kind of talking in that kind of respect. Yeah, here they come up. Yeah, so I'm probably getting in an analog scale on the sound devices, I guess. So I think the analog scale is maybe where 0 is -20, but I probably need to check. I know that there's a few different ways of metering, but essentially the -20 thing, -18 thing, up until the kind of -12 thing for peaking, and using and enabling both your VU meters and your peak meters to get more accurate sense of like how loud the sound is perceived, is just really, really good. And I've done videos on that as well, just basically covering that a peak, like a click is not necessarily very, it's not very intense loud in terms of VU, which is kind of more like your hearing, which is a lot slower to react. But peak metering is literally the highest point in the wave, and so you know when you start to physically clip the top of a sound wave, although it might not necessarily be the loudest sound. So there's lots of other, obviously, physics stuff that goes into that, and psychoacoustics. Sup, Tim Chan, Rallan Man. Yeah, thanks for correcting me on that. Yeah, I think I got it right. So Simon asks, hey, what limiter settings do you use on your 688? I use 16 dBu. Oh, that's what it is. The metering range is in dBu, not dBFS. So that means, what is it, decibel units? So I do basically -4 in terms of it kicking in, and then I do a soft knee, which means that it's going to be slower to kind of enact stuff as well. Simon, I recently switched from viewing peak only to doing both. Yeah, very good, which I find much better for overall loudness. Yeah, exactly, for the reasons that I just explained before. And even with the peak hold thing, I would sometimes that can it started to slightly throw me off sometimes. It's obviously good if maybe you're one-man banding, but I think with the limiters on, it doesn't make that much of a difference. If you have a second to look down and you've seen that the limiters are enabled, I'd go based more on your hearing, and so then you can see instantly what's going on. Yeah, so that's just my kind of 2 cents on that. And if you're new to the show, then obviously just basically get in and ask your questions, and I'll kind of give my 2 cents, and hopefully I've come up with at least one way of solving a problem. And then, yeah, I can document that as well. Yes, lots of other schemes and plans coming up as well, which I'm quite excited by. Oh, could I go back from break? No worries, sir. Let me know in the comments after if I can do anything for you. Don't forget to give a like, it always helps. Simon, Matt, limited settings are 16 dBu and hard knee by default. I've switched to soft knee, but was wondering if you change it to 14, if that would be safer. What do you use? So I still have it at 16, but I have a soft knee instead, and I find that's fine. It really needs to go a long way in terms of overall difference, in terms of that massive change, for me to kind of slowly react in terms of turning down the gain or being able to anticipate something. Obviously, things like explosions, stuff like that. I mean, that's just going to be part and parcel of it. But generally, when people are talking, I find that's fine. And again, we're talking about headroom, I guess, overall. So you can always, if you think stuff's going to be loud, then it's okay to have it a bit lower. And for instance, if people are talking a little bit softer, it's okay in that scale to have it slightly lower, I feel, personally. So if it's -20 and, or -20 and to -12 at kind of this level that I'm talking at right now, even though I'm kind of exaggerating for the point, and then I'm now talking at this level, then this one's probably going to be more around the -20 range, but also with peak, if you see what I mean. So actually then I have headroom back if I suddenly go a bit louder or I start laughing or that kind of thing. Generally I find as well that this is me talking generally about the boom. Obviously it's a whole different ball game when you're setting up your wireless, because basically they're already coming into the transmitter. And so you have to set those up correctly. And with the electrosonics at the moment, I've been experimenting with actually pumping in more audio level for several reasons. One, you get actually increased range because it's basically a stronger signal being sent out in a kind of weird way. I watched their video a few times and they were saying that basically it's fine to kind of start to go in to the limiters, so you're always seeing green and maybe even seeing a bit of red, which can worry a few people as well. Maybe they should swap it round, so red is kind of, yeah, you're not quite there yet, and then green is good, but yeah, that's probably for a later date. And yeah, and then basically not doing as much on my mixer end in terms of level, and just being able to kind of turn it down. So yeah, lots of experimenting going on. Eesh. And now I'm an hour ahead to what I usually am in the UK. So it's 12 o'clock now. So yeah. Yeah, better range and signal to noise. Yeah, so that can also help you obviously kill, well, in a slight way, yeah, rustle, things like that. have you had a chance to play with the mini mount since your last video? I forgot to bring some with me on this shoot. I have had to play around. I found that overall the shape, again, the build, I was very, very happy with the build quality because, again, I knew that some people, when they first got the DPA concealers, they, after a while, they started breaking apart because they were accidentally like opening them too much. I did a test where I literally like tried to kind of snap one in half, and they're kind of so slim that yeah, they just didn't break really. They just started hurting my hands, and yeah, but I need to do more tests in terms of placement because sometimes they weren't great in terms of yeah, they're just the shape that they were because they were coming out as like a single. You kind of get different issues because sometimes if you're sticking it straight to a top, for instance, you get that square outline, which is obviously useless. And that isn't obviously solved if you just have a straight line because then you can see a ruffle in the shirt. So it's, yeah, I still need to do some more product testing, but they're kind of, yeah, I'm pretty happy with them. And yes, I wish I had time to go to Sonella. I basically start in about 5 hours time shooting, and then we're straight back on the Eurostar, and I go straight back to London. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to properly arrange any kind of full scale meetup or anything. But yeah, hopefully I'll be better at that. Oy. So yeah. And any other questions, guys? What monitors do you use for post work? Am I happy with? I've had General X for ages, so I think I had the 8030s, maybe the 8030, and I want to say A on the end. Again, I don't do post enough that I think I have a proper good grasp on like how they translate. I just know that they're kind of really transparent and sometimes a bit maybe overly harsh, but I find that because I'm mainly doing lots of kind of dialogue work is the main kind of thing in terms of the edit, in terms of trying to get that smooth. I find that sometimes that's really useful because then actually when you get to a proper studio space, which is another reason why I'm probably not the best judge, even though obviously the Genelec brand is very well known along with many others. Yeah, I don't really have the right setup in my room to like properly test anything, but I've been very happy with them, and they sound great, and they last a long time, and they turn up really loud if needed. So that's all I kind of expect from speakers. Basically, they just sound really good, and for dialogue editing, that they're kind of a bit harsher. Oh my god! All this talking, I should have got some water. Rallan Man, how do you power your bag? So I have the SL6, which goes on top of the Sound Devices 688, and actually then I can put in an MP1 battery in the side, or you can put in probably an NP75 or whatever. But they brought out the new MP1s a while ago, or the new editions, so I could even have 2 extra D taps if I needed to out of that. But with the SL6, I already have another 4 extra outputs for power and a USB socket for power within the bag, so it's definitely plenty of power, and I really like it because then even when I'm doing the hot swapping, it keeps my wireless on as well. And yeah, runtime on the battery, so I've got one battery that's pretty new and one that's probably like a year-ish old, year and a half old maybe. So basically 2 batteries is just enough for like a super intense day of pretty much filming for like 11-12 hours straight. Again, like results may vary in terms of like how many wireless and that kind of thing. I use a combination of mics that both require like AES and require phantom power, so yeah, it can range. But on this dock, for instance, if we end up shooting a total of about 5 hours of stuff, I can pretty much run that on one battery, and that's kind of spread throughout the day, which is really nice. Super Sloth, any tips for putting lavs on actors who are running while giving lines? Firstly, it is very hard, mainly because even if you're getting the lav like secure straight to the body, the actual movement of either clothes causing like the flapping motion or just generally the kind of shock of the body like bouncing on it does make it really tough. But I would say basically a chest strap is probably the best way to go in terms of keeping it kind of in the same place. And then you just have to try and be a bit clever about keeping clothes away from the actual capsule, but avoiding rubbing, which is obviously really hard because then you also may need wind protection depending on how fast they're running and how windy it is. So I would say try out the test strap and even just type into YouTube Soundrolling chest strap lav, and I review the Ursa straps one. Also good for kind of cutting down just rustling and cable noise generally for how it's just secured. And I have a feeling that because if it's running, the actors, like it wouldn't be a thing that I would use all the time day to day, like force everyone to do it. But it basically turns the lav mounting technique to a similar idea as like hide a mic and like clipping it onto a bra, because obviously you have that band going around the body, keeping it very secure, and then yeah, you just got to watch out for the clothes movement, which may even just translate into the actual noise of running, because obviously arms and this kind of thing. So there's a million different ways. So yeah, so hopefully that gives you a few ideas at least, and leave a thumbs up if it works. Simon, any tips for rigging a mic on a buttoned up shirt with the top button undone? Yeah, super easy. Basically, just go to the button that is done up and just go below with an RM11 or even a mini mount, kind of right in the middle, and the kind of thicker layer of the shirt should hide the wire and should, because naturally they have a bit of a gap in between buttons, not be as visible. Again, depending on which angle you're shooting, it's going to be a case of maybe they're shooting and they're going to see the opening in the shirt and you have to do a bit of re-rigging, but hopefully it would only just be for a few shots. And I kind of find that works. Maybe you need a bit lower, or maybe a bit higher. Oh my god. Maybe you need a bit lower, a bit higher. Again, results vary with all this kind of advice, unfortunately, not being there, because depending on clothing material and what they're doing and blah blah blah. But that's kind of my default of what I try first, and it works out for me very well. Even on this dock, we have quite a lot with the shirt with the top button undone, and it's not a problem at all. Just making sure that it's not being caught in the side, and that's why it can be important to get your accessories to match. So I really love having like white lavs and black lavs, because generally stuff is darker or lighter, and the same with the actual color of the lav as well. And then that means that you can basically, yeah, things can blend in better. I'm not saying that a black would blend in better, but I don't know, maybe. I got a bit of hair, like if I look down, it's, yeah, maybe you don't notice it as much. Again, results may vary, so hopefully that helps you guys out. I also need more material for the podcast, guys and gals. So if you haven't got on the podcast already, I think you can just search in whatever podcast thing that you have, whether it's iTunes or Apple Podcasts or whatever. And maybe I'll try and break down some of the questions I've answered today into little segments as well. I just want to build up like a fucking crazy library of different stuff. And yeah, then it's searchable and everything else. I think, since it's pretty much the 20-minute mark, to love you and leave you on this one. But I'll be back tomorrow, hopefully, if I'm not too dead from the Eurostar. If not, catch me on Instagram at Soundrolling. And yeah, we're just getting this massive ball rolling again. So excited to have like 7 of you on, 8 of you, 10, or however many actually came and went, because I know not everyone can watch 20 minutes all in one go. And yeah, just hit me up about podcasts or anything, and you can always DM me on Instagram, and I'll try and respond whenever I can. So until next time, I will see you later.